So yeah, I'm here because with Seattle Fair Growth, and I'm here because it's a lot easier to ask these questions and actually answer them. So I appreciate you being up here. The reason I came to Seattle was primarily because of the livability. There was a job offer, but many years ago, but Seattle at the time was the most livable city in the country, according to Newsweek. I don't think I would be coming here for that job again, or that wouldn't be the reason I'd be coming here today. I have been bastardized, whatever you call it. Tall, out of place buildings that are out of place, totally out of place with community that are putting shadows over beautiful homes and cottages, blocking light, very little open space now. Our road system capacity throughout Seattle there is no capacity anymore. We're one of the 10 worst cities in traffic in the country now, regularly. Our schools are overcrowded. I mean, this is a laundry list, I know. Our tree canopy is disappearing and thousands of people are living in the streets without homes. So when you go home at night, what do you think of when you think of livability, and what would you do specifically to address some of those issues within 1 minute and a half?
That's crazy. So I do want to address the zoning issue real quick. In terms of having a standard response across the city is not going to work everywhere. There are different types of zoning that we can use to make our city more affordable, which involves cottages, and also involves working with different areas to figure out how we don't do things like disrupt our tree canopy, because that's actually a really important ecological aspect in our city. What do I think about when I go home at night? I think about the 11,000 folks who are living unsheltered in our city. I think about the fact that we continue to sweep folks, which is incredibly inhumane and a waste of fiscal resources. If you think about it, we've done over 600 sweeps. If each of those costs $100,000, we spent $6 million on moving people around the city where we could have used $6 million to provide services and to start building an effective plan for how we actually expand our capacity through coordinated care to actually serve populations who tend to not get served because the process is bottlenecked. We could have built 24/7 storage units. We could have built additional temporary shelters. And so for me, it is about addressing some very emergent needs within our city, which is then interconnected to affordable housing. I currently am going to be looking for housing in about 2 months when my lease is up. And so even I am in a position of wondering, how hard is it going to be for me to find a place to rent? So those really are the emergent concerns in our city, and they are what I think about on a regular basis as a case manager and a service provider. But those are interlocked with education, transportation, healthcare. None of these things are siloed, they're all actually interconnected. And that's been part of the problem in Seattle, because we respond to problems in a silo and not with a systems transformation perspective.
Okay, thank you. So one of the questions I've asked all the candidates so far is about MHA and impact fees, because we have an MHA program that's being implemented right now, which is taxing developers in a way for affordable housing. And then there's also the opportunity for impact fees, which we've neglected and not taken advantage of because it's legal. But could we have both? Could we have MHA, could we have impact fees? Do you think you can kind of double down on developers?
I think we need both. We can't get around it. Development is deeply impacting our city. And if we're going to address the affordability crisis and actually answer the question of who has the right to stay here, both are going to be necessary to dig us out of the hole that the previous administrations of the city have allowed us to actually dig ourselves into. So if we don't do both, as well as various other market intervention strategies, honestly, we're going to continue to become wealthier and more homogenous without less accessibility. We have to take drastic steps in the right direction because we haven't been moving in the right direction. I do think it's possible. Will there be developers who don't like it? Of course, it's going to cut into their profits, but we're going to put people over profits.
Well, kind of the question is, if it gets too costly to build, that potentially there would be less development. Great.
I think part of the problem is that argument relies solely upon the private market to develop the housing to meet our need. I'm not interested in relying just on the private market. I know Senator Hasagawa has talked a lot about having a state public bank. That's a conversation that's actually been happening at the city level now for a number of months around indigenous organizers who have been doing the Wells Fargo divestment campaign, and now are wanting to move towards having a bank where we actually don't have to push the city to divest. We already have our own very principled bank, and that is an opportunity to leverage resources to actually build our own housing. The city building its own housing that it controls is going to be essential to us digging out of our relationship with the private market that has made us beholden to developers, where we make arguments like, but what if they don't want to build anymore? Cool, well, we can build our own now. So I think it's really important that we stop thinking about what might happen and realize what is happening, and it's that there's 11,000 unsheltered people and folks being pushed out of our city every day, and we just have to take drastic steps in the right direction. Will there be developers that don't want to build here any longer? Yes, but we live in one of the wealthiest cities in the US. I'm certain that it's not going to steal too many of their profits.
Thank you very much.